Yo, what's up, guys? It's Valix Fury here, and today I just want to give you guys my thoughts and opinions on the new third-person ARPG, Outriders. As you can see, I've got footage in the background of it, so it's basically just going to be me talking over some background footage of my thoughts of the game, how I think it is, what I like, what I don't like, what I'd like to see in the future, and any issues I have with it, and how I think it's going the first few days. So let's get started. So, Outriders is a third-person shooter from People Can Fly, people that made Gears of War Judgment, and for those most people that don't know, they made Fortnite Save the World, which I play a lot of. So, firstly, the story mode. Let's start with the story mode. So, the story mode, there's kind of a story here. It's not terrible. The dialogue is a bit meh. The camera shake in cutscenes is horrendous at times, as anyone who's played will know. But overall, it's passable. It's serviceable. It does what it does. It has a story, has a beginning, a middle, and end. Some things happen that might get you a bit emotional. I don't want to give any spoilers, but things happen that if you pay attention to the story and are invested in the characters, might mean something to you. But for the most part, it's just a placeholder. It's just serviceable. It'll get you into the game and get you towards the end game where it really begins. But for the most part of the story, the world tier system, let's talk about that. The world tier system in the campaign specifically, when you're leveling through the campaign, you don't get rewards as frequently as you require, and the world tier system out levels the speed at which you get rewards. So if you're world tier 5, enemies are going to be 2 levels higher than you, but you only get loot from sometimes things that you kill, and then quest rewards, which more often than not will be, it should be at that 2 levels higher than you. So if you're level 10, it should be level 12, but like, it could have bad stat rolls or bad mods, and it's not like that's an issue. You can easily replace those, but it's just, it levels up faster than you can get an upgrade to every slot in your arsenal. So you could end up with boots or something that are like 3 or 4 levels behind, and you're just getting one shot, or you're just not doing the damage because you don't have a weapon that's on level, and the game kind of power creeps you. It gets, the enemies get stronger than you faster than you. So like, say you both start at level 1, for every 100 XP you're getting, they're getting like 200 XP, or maybe not that bad, like 150 XP. So eventually they become like 1.5 times, 2 times stronger than you, where it's just so much harder for you to kill them than it realistically should be. So what I would recommend for most people is, honestly, what I did leveling my 2 old characters is just leave it on world tier 1 and just fly through just the main story missions. You'll get from level 1 to 25, 26 in just flying through it, skipping the cutscenes. Took me about 3 hours pretty much on the dot, just flying through it as fast as I could. And then you can go back and do the side missions and level up your world tier that way if you're so inclined. Or you can just go straight into the end game if you have someone that can carry you through a level 1 expedition, because they'll be at level 31, so you'll be substantially under leveled for that. But if you don't spend any of your resources, you can upgrade your gear at the end game and become like viable. Speaking of the end game, let's move into that from there. So in the end game, there's expeditions. It's the balancing in this game is ass backwards. Like, as you can see in the gameplay, I'm just using blighted rounds on my Technomancer to kill everything, and that's pretty much the only strategy. You have your round buff, so blighted rounds for Techno, and what are they, Inferno rounds, or the thermal rounds for the Pyro, and twisted rounds for the Trickster. And then you just have like 2 defensive CC abilities as your other 2 ones to keep you alive and to stop the enemies in some way or another by slowing them, freezing them, or interrupting them in some way, shape or form. And then from there you just rely on the rounds to do everything. So the game just becomes a run and gun, and all this cover in the map, the cover is there for the enemies. It's, if you notice, when you play a lot of the human encounter maps, there's a lot more cover, because the cover is there for the enemies, not for you. You just have the ability to use it sometimes if you want. Because if you're fighting the aliens, the monsters, they're all just arenas. There's no cover in those maps because the monsters aren't going to use the cover. The cover's not there for you. The cover's there for the enemies. I think that's a big thing a lot of people will run into when they first start playing, is trying to use a cover system and play it like is war or something like that, and not just running around gunning, because that's essentially all it is you just run around shooting stuff, and it's so unbalanced. So like the blighted rounds and whatnot do make up 85% of your damage, and like it seems so difficult to play any other way because the scaling is just so freaking ridiculous. Like, they probably need to nerf all of the rounds, but in doing so, a lot of people are probably going to get pissed and leave because they have to. Like, it's just, the game's just going to devolve into this of just popping your rounds and then just shooting stuff, basically what I'm doing in the background, which is, this is what the end game looks like. You just shoot stuff. Nobody uses abilities that are cool or anything. You just shoot stuff, CC things, and stay alive. They need to nerf them, but I don't want to see them like nerf it into the ground where it's still unviable. I'd like to see them as a core part of the build, but I like to see more utility or offense-based abilities. Like, just the abilities are cool, but they're just so just not inviting to use. So the heat wave on the pyromancer, for example, has quite a long cast animation, and then the wave travels quite slowly, and it isn't very wide. So it's like, why would I waste the 4 seconds to cast that and have it hit someone where I could just shoot them 3 times with blighted rounds and they would be dead, and I don't have to waste a cooldown? Like, that just, the game is just a shooter with some abilities on it. It's not a ability based shooter, which is, I think, was what I was thinking when you see all the trailers. You're like, oh sick, look at all those abilities, they look cool, but they're just so difficult to use because they're not as impactful as you would want them to be, and they aren't as useful. Like the heatwave, for example, against aliens, if you cast it, they just move, and you just have an ability that was just essentially wasted. So anything with a cast animation just loses so much value. So things like overheat or the cold snap grenade on the Technomancer that just don't have a cast animation and you just can cast them instantly, they're just so much more valuable because they're instant access to a skill that works. Especially overheat on the pyro, that is underrated. It's an instant global interrupt that can do damage. Like, it's so OP. It's mainly just the balancing with this game. I love the game and I've played a lot of it. I'm up to tier 13 in Expedition, so I'm not maxed out at any stage, but I think I've played enough to understand the game and have an opinion on it. But it's just the gameplay loop, it just is devolved into popping your tank CC ability and then popping your browns and shooting stuff. There's no like super cool mods for the gear. Like, imagine if there was a mod for the pyromancer, instead of just shooting the heat wave forwards, it shot it like in a 360-degree circle out from you. It increased its movement speed so it could actually get to stuff and kill it, so they couldn't just dodge it, and just things like that. Just the abilities seem like janky and hard to use. Like the cryo turret for the Technomancer, for example, I don't know what target acquisition it has, or if it has any, but my god, does it take forever to acquire a target and then still misses? The fact that the AI is programmed to miss is beyond me. And the fact you can get the cooldown so low and there's not a mod to let you have 2 turrets out at once, like, that seems like a very basic thing. I would much rather them nerf the rounds, but not to the point where they're as useless as everything else in the game. Nerf them a bit, but buff everything else. Everything else needs a severe buff and some tuning. But if they're going to nerf the rounds, they have to nerf the enemies as well, because without the rounds, the health that these enemies have, you will not be able to kill them with abilities that have a cooldown and can miss. Like, the consistent DPS just isn't going to be there without the rounds, because it's just poorly designed at best, I think. The another thing that really grinds my gears is the interrupt stacking. So when you're versing the monsters, the slightly bigger ones, the medium-sized ones, I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now, but they charge at you and they knock you down. When you get knocked down, your guy just rolls and gets instantly back up, and they charge again instantly and can knock you back down. And if 2 or more of them do that to you, you get stuck in a stagger lock where you just die and you can't do anything because the dodge is essentially useless. I've had it happen multiple times where you see one of them priming their attack to charge at you and you roll directly sideways and they go past you and miss and land behind you, but for some reason their attack has some 50 meter AoE and it knocks you down anyways. And it's just annoying how many things stagger you and prevent you from casting your abilities and reloading. Even the little guys have a stagger attack, which, like the tiny little aliens, which is just, there needs to either be a removal of a lot of stagger attacks from a lot of monsters, or the dodge needs to either go further or have iframes, or there needs to be a cooldown and how often you can be staggered. So you can only be staggered once every, even a 1 second cooldown at this point, because the fact that you can be staggered back to back to back with no respite is quite unfair. That if you get hit by the wrong things in the wrong order at the wrong time, you just lose. There's no outplay. Like, I think the easiest solution would be giving the dodge iframes so that you can roll through attacks and actually dodge them instead of thinking you dodge them and still getting hit. That's quite frustrating to deal with, and I'm sure if you haven't run into it, you will, and it will infuriate you as much as it infuriates me. What else do I like about the game? The birds. The birds are super annoying. They have, like, so many, everything they do is an interrupt. And the sporadicness of their movement, it's just unpredictable and so fast that it's hard to, if you're surrounded by a bunch of things, you obviously need to focus the bird, but you can't because you try and focus it and it just is moving all over your screen and you can't hit it. I think the birds might need to be toned down. Maybe make them tankier and slower instead of having them so fast. Maybe have a delay between how frequently they do their attacks. They seem to dive bomb you, then go straight back up and throw the knives attack at you, and then do the up dive bomb again, like just back to back to back with no downtime. There just doesn't seem to be a lot of counterplay to a lot of things. It's basically like they're just throwing everything at you, and if you get caught by it, bad luck, because you're just going to be stagger locked to death. And the dodge is useless, so you can't. There's no skill gap there to actually use the dodge's iframes to get away from anything. Things I do like about the game, though, this game is very much up my alley. It's an RPG, which is something I've always been addicted to, and a loot grindy one, which is reminds me a lot of, essentially, this is just a third-person Diablo to me. This is not like Destiny at all. The gear progression and the gameplay loop is far more akin to a Diablo than a Destiny. The only thing this has in common with a Destiny is it has guns that shoot. The guns, there's really not a lot of feedback on the guns. They don't feel unique when you shoot them. That you, like, you know, in Destiny, when you shoot a gun, like, it feels good. Like, all the guns just feel, I'm shooting. Like, it doesn't feel like the gun has a lot of feedback. Doesn't feel impactful or different to shoot a different archetype of a weapon. They all feel like, all assault rifles feel like they shoot the same, or burst rifles, or sharpshooter rifles. They all shoot the same. There's no uniqueness. That would be nice if that was a thing that happened. What else have we got? I do like the abilities. I just wish they worked more and worked better. Like, they're just, yeah, they're severely lacking. It's just too easy to just shoot stuff. And the fact that there's an ability that makes your gun do like 20 times more damage is just insane. There's just so many like little things that need to be fixed that would make the game so much better. Like the modding system's nice. I do really like the modding system. How you can, and it's very cheap too, so you can get a piece of gear, and pretty much if it has the one mod you like, you can just swap the other one to whatever you want, and just constantly swap the one mod you don't want for whatever you want, and it's very cheap to do that. So that's cool that they've got a lot of you got a lot of freedom to kind of do what you want. So as long as you get a piece of gear that has at least one mod that you want, you can switch it out, switch it around, and make whatever build you want. So it's really handy in that way. I do really like the freedom you have with that. Same as the weapons. I don't really. The biggest thing I don't really understand the fact that there's 3 weapon slots when I'm only ever using my one weapon because of blighted rounds. If I change weapon, I lose my rounds. So why would I change weapon for a different scenario? I think maybe some of the weapon variants need to come with intrinsic perks of like armor piercing or resistance piercing or something of the like to encourage you to use your whole arsenal. Like, I've never once pulled out my pistol, and apart from playing through the campaign when I'd have a ranged weapon like an assault rifle and then a shotgun for close range, in expeditions I'm just using my burst fire assault rifle. I do not swap weapons because swapping weapons loses blighted rounds. Maybe that could be a way that they could bring blighted rounds or the rounds back in line, is instead of losing them on weapon swap, you kept them on weapon swap. But but they just would tone the damage down. So you essentially could get, if you had the double mag, you could essentially get 4. You shot it off your AR mag twice and then change to your second weapon to shoot it off twice. Or if you could just carry it over some way until a mag is empty, then I guess people would manipulate that and you'd be able to shoot forever by weapon swapping. But it's just the end game is so just non-engaging. It's literally you just grinding until your numbers are bigger than the numbers on the enemies. There's not really a lot of tactics. The only tactic is popping the thing that gives you the most defensive stats and then having something that gives you some crowd control. And then just grinding it out until your numbers are bigger than theirs. And then when they are, that's it. There's nothing that you have to... There's not really a lot of skill involved in the game per se, because the dodge has no iframes. There's no like tactical use of abilities. Like in the campaign, in the demo, it was good. Like you could be prompted to interrupt things' abilities because there's so many things constantly happening, and you can only really cast and focus those interrupts and shit on one guy at a time. It's very hard to actually play the game that way when there's just crap everywhere. I think, yeah, that's the biggest issue is the end game at the moment. But the game is really good, and I'm going to play the crap out of it. And I am absolutely loving it. It's just there's a lot of little things that they could fix that would just make the game so much better. The rounds, as difficult as it is to say, and as much as it's going to piss everybody off, they have to be nerfed. They are just blatantly overpowered. It's basically like cheating. It's just like you put this on and you just walk through shooting. It's just like, I feel like the game doesn't need to be 100% about the abilities, but man, at least like 60-40. Because right now, 100% of my gameplay is just shooting and then popping a CC ability. Especially on Techno, because you don't need to heal from killing stuff, you just shoot stuff. So it's even more just shooting on the Techno. Campaign was serviceable. Endgame, the game's got so much potential for like build diversity, the mod system, the guns. I'd like to see some like explosive weapons. Like, I understand the Techno has a spawnable rocket launcher, but maybe like a grenade launcher or something that does AoE damage. Maybe something that does AoE damage has like inbuilt armor shred on it, and just add a bit more strategy to the game instead of it's just a numbers game at this point. If your numbers aren't big enough, you will lose. If they are big enough, you will win. There's not really a lot in the lines of what your skill as a player can make up for. Like, it's, if you go into something that you're 5 levels under leveled for, you're going to get like, there's your skill in gameplay is, it's not going to matter. It doesn't matter how good you are at the game, because the roll has a cooldown, it doesn't have iframes, and you will just get stagger locked. Like, I'd like to see the game have a more skill focused orientation instead of just be an outright numbers game. Like, the FOV needs to be pulled back. 90 is too close, especially when you ADS and it goes down to like 50. Your ADS FOV needs to be at like 75, 80, and then the unscope needs to be like 115, because if something gets behind you, and like if something is behind you and attacking you from behind, and you're ADS'd, you can't see the ground in front of you, so you can't even see like the marker on the ground telling you where the attack's going to be because you're so scoped in. Like that right there, for example, is a prime example. You don't know that that guy's coming, even though it has a thing on the ground telling you he's coming. You can't see it because you can't see that circle, and the dodge roll doesn't get you out of that as well. Like, it's just, yeah, there's a lot of little things. If they get fixed, the game will be just unbelievably good. It's already super fun and I love it, but it could get so much better and just become one of the better looter shooters on the market. But yeah, that's my thoughts so far in the first few days of Outriders, and the 40 odd hours I've already played. I've been going hard. But yeah, there's a lot of little things that are just like annoyances and grievances, but overall I freaking love the game and it's got so much potential, and I can't wait to see how this game goes in the future. If you guys like the video, and make sure to like it and subscribe if you want to see more Outriders content. I'm going to be covering a lot of this game in the future. Let me know in the comments your thoughts on the game, what you think you'd like to see changed, what you do and don't like. And also I stream most days, trying to stream every day at the moment, of Outriders on Twitch TV at Twitch TV Alex_Fury. I'll link that in the description, so come on by and check it out and let me know how you like an Outriders, your thoughts. Maybe we can talk some Outriders and maybe we can play some games together. But for now, that's it for me, guys. I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you next time.